Welcome to Inflection Point Podcast, where we cultivate change from the inside out as we ponder the Cairo question. Will Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? We stand on the belief that dismantling racism goes beyond laws and legislation or politics and economics. Here, anti-racism activation is presented as an inside job where personal transformation and accountability impact social change. So take a seat at the anti-racism activation table with Inflection Point Podcast.
Well, hello, and thank you so much for tuning in to the latest episode of Inflection Point Podcast. We are dedicated to anti-racism activation and the art of listening in authentic conversation, engagement, and action. I am your host, Anita Russell, and here's a quick hello from co-hosts Mavis Bauman and Gail Hunter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mavis Bauman. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Gail Hunter, and welcome.
Excellent. So if you've been following us, you know that in 2025, we turned our attention towards community engagement and the grassroots of change. So throughout the year, we have been exploring those stories and those strategies and organizations and successes of community-driven movements that are making a difference. So our episodes focus on both the theoretical and practical examples, allowing our audience to gain insights that they can apply in real-world community engagement efforts. So all three of us are involved in engagement in one form or another. So we're going to talk about that as the show proceeds. But for our topic today, we are really putting an emphasis on strategies for youth empowerment as youth empowerment relates to community engagement. So we're going to explore the importance and the significance of involving younger generations in community engagement and those grassroots efforts. So let's start off by asking ourselves a question. It might be a very obvious question. Why is it important to involve younger generations in community engagement? And so for me, the answer that kind of floats to the top of my mind is that engaging youth in community engagement projects is a powerful way to develop leadership, to build that intergenerational solidarity, and to nurture civic responsibilities. So Mavis and Gail, off the top of your head, what is one good reason that you see that it's important to involve younger generations in community engagement?
Can I give you two?
Mm-hmm.
It prevents them from being idle, and it engages their brain in activity where they're just learning at all times.
Excellent. Your thoughts, Gail?
Oops.
Oh, I think we just lost Gail. Okay, so we're just going to keep it moving. What I'd like to share with our audience at this point is looks like Gail is back. So Gail, we were just kind of getting to you in terms of your thoughts on the answer to that question. Why is it important to involve younger generations in community engagement?
You'll have to come off mute. Yeah. She's in the sun.
So while Gail was trying to manipulate her technology, I'd like to present these 5 core principles and strategies as it relates to the topic of younger generations and community engagement. Okay, Gail, are you here? You good?
Yeah, I hope so.
Your thoughts, and then I'll go into the principles and strategies.
Okay, I believe it's important for a variety of reasons, but most of all because these are young people that are in the community, and we would want them to stay in the community. And so in order to get them to desire that and choose that, we have to create a desire within them and to reach out and have them feel more connected to not just their generation, but to other generations and to whoever lives in that community. And so I think it's important, or the community doesn't go on, right? It's because we really do need the young people in that generation continue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you just even think about the word community, has unity in it. And so
Mhm.
you can look at that from that kind of perspective as well. But I want to bring up 5 core principles and strategies for why it's important to engage young people. Youth, and the first one is presenting youth or empowering youth in such a way that we see them as partners and not just participants. So I've done so many youth workshops and things like that in my own work. And in the process of facilitating, I've always looked at them as a partner in their own learning process. And so it's kind of treating young people as co-creators in the process, if you will, or inviting them into decision-making, design, and leadership roles. And later on, I'm going to actually talk about one organization where I had the opportunity to do exactly that. The second one is making sure that we are connecting to their lives and to their interests and kind of focusing on those issues that they care about. Climate, education, racial justice, mental health, all of these things that we as adults are concerned about. Believe it or not, young people are concerned about those things as well. And I'm not just talking about teenagers, I'm talking about younger children as well that are becoming more and more aware and more conscious of what is happening all around them. And then third is building skills and building confidence through training and public speaking and organizing and media literacy and all of these types of things that help to build their skills, their successes, and be able to celebrate them publicly. Ensuring mentorship and support. That's kind of pairing youth with adult mentors or allies, and often consistently checking in and reflecting on how are things going. And then finally, making it fun and purposeful, blending activism, blending creativity. That's music and murals and magazines and street theater and all of these things that are really, really powerful in the lives of our young people, and bringing all of that to fruition to be able to organize and meet some of the challenges that are in our communities. Your thoughts, Mavis Gail?
Well, certainly all of
I
those
believe
things-
I agree with you.
Oh, I guess. Go ahead, Gail.
Go ahead.
She might be a little behind us.
Yeah.
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 So I'll just continue. I just have been thinking about how I grew up, and there weren't really any mentors around us. I think in my childhood, I was kind of like I say, a free range chicken running around learning through play. And but I do remember specific adults when I was a kid and how they impacted me by something they said or did. I think a lot of kids sell rocks like I did from the street. I became an entrepreneur. And
Wait, you sold rocks?
I saw little rocks. I tweaked them and buffed them, and yeah, for a nickel. And and it was, just kind of a real life trial of being in business and being refused and having to up my game. So we learned that way. Whereas now it seems like children are not as free to roam about, and we need to more intentionalize how they're engaged in our communities.
Yeah, that's really, really true. One of the things when I think about myself growing up that just rings so loudly in my memory is when you turn 14. So there was a manpower program. So when you turn 14, everybody on their 14th birthday went and got their working papers. So then by the time summertime rolled around, there was a whole entire list of jobs that we could have as teens. But the one thing that really stays in my mind is how those jobs were really, really knitted to the community. So, for example, I had one job where I was kind of like a playground supervisor, working with the younger kids and all of that. Had another one where I went into the homes of senior citizens and did work for them, shopped for them, cleaned their house. And so these were some of the experiences that I had in growing up in my local community.
Right. And that was an intentionalized program. I mean, how awesome is it? Because you don't really know how to look for a job, but they put jobs in front of you and you get to select. And then, you know, your sense of self and your importance in the community gets
Absolutely.
increased, and so does your pocketbook.
Yeah. And speaking of the pocketbook, I can just remember how excited I was to get my first check for like $250. I was,
Oh boy,
you know, it was mine. It was something that I earned
yes,
myself.
yes.
And so it made me feel really good. And because it was so community driven, just about all of my friends were in the same boat. We all had jobs in the summertime, and it was just a very, very wonderful, wonderful experience. So I want to
Very
jump
cool.
a little bit into a little bit more of the topic for today. And I want to start with an organization called Toffler Associates, which was kind of founded in the works of Alvin and Heidi Toffler, who were these futurist individuals, and they kind of had this capacity of being able to look at where we were currently, and with technology and the economy and all of these different forces that are at work in our lives, and then start thinking about where we are today. How does that project into the future, and how we're going to be interacting with one another in the future? As a matter of fact, Alvin Toffler is actually the author of a futurist book called Future Shock, in which he kind of talks about all of these things that are happening in one time period. And so you have the benefit of the history behind where you are in that time period, but then you also need to start thinking about the future. What is the future going to be looking like? And when I think about where we are right now, that is a very profound question. What is our future going to look like? And
Yeah.
so the Toffler Associates, they asked a question. The future is in the hands of our youth, and are they prepared? And so when you think about that question, are they prepared? And when you think about it through the lens of accountability for the past, while strongly considering what the future is, and we have to look at our young people, because they are the ones who will be picking up the gauntlet, hopefully, as we move forward. And so what we do in terms of engaging our young people, in terms of giving them these opportunities for mentoring and leadership development, we have a very powerful responsibility as well, because the answer to that question is, are they prepared? Are we preparing them?
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Right.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
I'll try to go first. Can you hear?
Yep, we got to.
Okay. I mean, I don't know if they are prepared, and I don't look at them and blame them. I think it is the generations above them that it's our responsibility to make sure that they know who they are, they know what they believe in, and they have the actual facts behind what they believe in, and what they're willing to do and choose. So I think it's really, I don't know if they are prepared yet, but I think they can be. I believe that all youth can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They're so quick and have the space and the energy to learn at the rate that they've been growing up, you know, with technology changing things so quickly. I think about the role that they will have to play in helping us put guardrails in around AI, even around future internet use. All of those things, you know, have been impacting us, but now with AI, it seems even more so. So we need those minds that, you know, are, as they say, native to technology to help us sort this out. We need to put our minds together on that for our safety and theirs, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in this article, this Toffler Associates article where they pose that question, they talk a lot about measuring economic performance as an example, productivity and process and income. Do young people have the comparable social indicators to be able to test things in our civilization, or to test things as we're moving forward? What is the quality of life And what is our resilience to navigating some of those future shocks? I mean, if you think back 20 years ago, I did not imagine that the place that we're in right now is the place that we would be. And
No
so
way.
we're living out the reality of what's happening right now, while at the same time realizing the impact that what is going on now is going to have on our future. And just recognizing that we're going to need young people to be able to step up.
Exactly. And we need to be connected to them so that we can communicate what we see, given our level of wisdom, and what they see, given their level of actual experience and anticipation for the future.
But and I think, Anita, when you talked before about what's so important is we have to connect with them and find, as you said, is what they know, but also what are they interested in, and what are their perception, what's their belief systems going on, that and how they want to contribute, how they see, because they may have better ideas than what we might even have.
Exactly.
Ability to be able to stand and be listened to and heard.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's a interesting combination, because us as the old heads, if you will, we have to have a vested interest in what our young people are learning and what are they being groomed and who are they being groomed to be. And so some of the strategies that this article goes on to talk about is, for example, being able to make informed decisions in the present, right? And having that open, positive discourse to explore what are some of the emerging possibilities. So you have to be really cognizant of what's happening in the present, while at the same time thinking about how is this going to impact the future, and what are some of those emerging possibilities in the future, right? Another one is building a foundation for a new discourse. That means knowing history as well, because history offers some really deep insights into how we operate as in terms of humanity. How do we behave at the individual level? How are we behaving at the societal level? And what are those portfolios of capabilities, our assets? Are we able to anticipate and create a more inclusive future? All of these things are really so incredibly relevant today.
I was just thinking about David Hogg. He runs the organization Leaders We Deserve. He's one of the young fellows who was at the school during the Parkland shooting. So he's, I don't know how many years ago that was, 7, 8, something like that. He is now really trying to raise up people in his generation to act certainly against, for gun control and so on. And just watching him grow up and harness that horrible event into the energy that he knows his generation is going to need for gun control. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. There's a lot of talent there.
Absolutely.
A lot of
Absolutely.
they're putting to use that he's really motivated and working with.
Exactly. It's very exciting to see, isn't it? When you see a young senator like Maxwell Frost, or even AOC, they've got new steady energy. And that not only are they our future, we are their future. We are the dictators of their future in a way, impartially. I just think about, secure the future. Our children are our future. There's a double path of investment there in children when they're young, and what we are investing for our own futures. Who's going to be our doctors, our engineers? Are we investing in those little people? Yeah.
Absolutely. And what both of you are talking about is this idea of enabling or empowering young people to take the future into their own hands as well, right?
Yes.
And this, you think about the growing activism at that youth level, and they're focused on some hard problems. You think about Greta Thunberg.
Thunberg.
Yeah, what she did. Or Amanda Gorman, when she spoke those very powerful words at President Biden's inauguration. These are young people that are using their voices, right? Using their voices, using their lives to speak something different. And I think that's very, very exciting, because what it says to me is that they have their eyes fixed on a better future.
Yes. Yes. And someone poured into them courage, the level of courage, and supported them and mentored them. But yeah, they're long on determination for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So continuing with this article that I was reading from the Toffler Associates, they also included this section on how upgrading education will secure the future in terms of success and leadership, right? And there, I want to read this really, really powerful quote that I found in the reading. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because I feel like we're kind of in that place now where we've got a lot of learning to do. We still have a lot of learning to do, but we also have a lot of unlearning to do. And when you do unlearning, that often calls for you to relearn. So when you think about some of the things that we've talked about in terms of anti-racism, our activism work that we're doing, we're literally trying to get people to unlearn something and replace that with something else.
Or replace it with the truth, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then I love this statement here because, this whole entire thing about upgrading the education, and then they have a couple of bullet points underneath that. The very first one, and it makes me think of my 5-year-old grandson, Cairo, when I read this. Harness a kindergartner's innate creativity and critical thinking. Just think about how powerful that statement is.
Yeah.
So rather than, if you remember Paulo Freire and the pedagogy of the oppressed, and I remember seeing this image of like a kid sitting in a classroom with their head being opened up like a lid, and then the teacher is pouring information into their heads. That's not what we need. That's not what we need. And the whole idea of encouraging and harnessing that kindergarten's innate creativity and critical thinking is just mind-blowing to me. What if we thought like kindergartners in a way?
Yeah, the possibility.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I just thought that was very powerful. And it goes on to say that at some point in our education, most of us allow linear thinking and learning to squelch our creativity and to squelch our critical thinking skills, right? And kids rarely jockey for power in the group. They collaborate freely and naturally. My grandson, every time I take him to the playground, he can walk onto that playground and there's all kinds of kids on that playground and he doesn't know one single one of them. But by the time he's done, he will have interacted with every single kid at that playground. That's what we're talking about here. And he does that irrespective of their skin color, whether it's a boy or a girl, it just doesn't matter to him. He wants to collaboratively play at the playground, right?
And he has to check out and meet everybody first, right? He's open to getting to know who they are and what they're about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
We don't want to train that out of them.
No.
I on a couple of occasions, I've spoken to a child in a place of business where we were waiting in line or whatever. And I would comment to the child about a toy they were holding. And the child would say, I'm not supposed to talk to you.
Mm.
And I said, well, that's probably true. But, you know, when you look at the freedom that they naturally come with in their mind to connect to other people, that made me sad. You know,
Absolutely.
it's too hard for them to discern, but this is the world we live in. And how can we, work around that?
Right.
And that's the really sad part of it. You hit the
Yeah.
nail right on the head. This is the world that we currently live in.
Mhm.
You called yourself a free range chicken when you were growing up. I can totally relate to that.
Yeah.
You just went out in the morning, you came back at lunchtime, you went back out, you came back at dinner time, and there you have it.
Nobody was
And
worried.
then you
I
went
went
back
without
home
shoes.
right, exactly. And you went back home in the evening when the street lights came on. But we can't
Right.
afford to have our children roaming around like that, the way we did. We were blessed to be able to.
We were blessed. Yes.
We were absolutely blessed to be able to do that. And I often laugh to myself and think, like, my mother didn't know half of the stuff that we were doing when we were out and about during the day. As long as we didn't get in trouble, as long as we weren't doing anything bad or anything like that, we were fine. And how many of you remember that question or that phrase, take your butt outside? Right? What you doing in the house? Take your butt outside.
Yeah, it's so nice out. So nice out. Go out and play.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, we used to actually play under train bridges.
Mm-hmm.
We thought it was fun to climb under those iron bridges, and there's it made sort of walkways for repairs under there, and to feel the sensation of the train going over. And I remember thinking, I don't like this. But you learn that sense of keeping yourself
absolutely.
safe, you know, and, you know, just the climbing, all the activity, it's all learning.
Yeah, and it's almost time for us to take a break, but I wanted to just kind of call out this final bullet point, if you will. Prepare for the future in academics and application. Step out of generational bias and generational beliefs, those beliefs that hold us back collectively as a society. And it goes on to say, when we look at the behavior of young leaders, I mentioned Amanda Gorman earlier and Greta Thunberg, what we see is proof of their care for the future, backed by a capacity to think and act on it, and acting on a vision for the future that is better than what they know now.
Right.
So let that sink in. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and finish out the rest of the segment. So welcome back to Inflection Point Podcast as we continue the journey from community conversation to community engagement. In this episode, our attention is focused on strategies for youth participation and community engagement. So we've been talking extensively about some of the things that you know, some of the differences between like you can see the three of us are old heads. So the differences between how we grew up versus the way children are being raised up today. And there are some very stark differences there. But we want to move on, and we're going to delve a little bit into an organization that Gail and I both are familiar with in the city of Pittsburgh. It's called it's called YES. And YES is an acronym for Youth Empowerment Services. And I'm going to read this quote that kind of describes what YES is all about. Ahead of its time and punching above its weight, Youth Enrichment Services formed in 1994. The heart of YES is a spirit of mentorship. Our students remain most valuable assets and resource. They guide our project curriculum, they direct our focus, and they lead our youth activities. And so the thing that I like about that is that it kind of relates to something that we were talking about earlier, is allowing young people to come in and have that leadership role. right? We can define that leadership role for them within the context of what a program might be, but we also need to give them that free rein to grow into that type of leadership role. And then it goes on to say, by leveraging their unique skills and abilities and centering their voices, Yes has created a formula for success that influences community growth, economic prosperity, and student-driven leadership. That is so powerful.
Yes, it is.
That is so powerful. So the Yes model has been vetted and has survived for 3 decades. The student successes and outcomes are a testament to the important work we do to change the lives of young people and families in the region. So if I didn't mention it earlier, I wanted to just, or if I did, I just wanted to say it again, that this is actually a youth organization located in the city of Pittsburgh. And they have these 4 principles, if you will: empowering youth through mentorship, education, advocacy, and exposure; enriching students' educational, social, cultural, and workforce experiences; serving local and surrounding Pittsburgh communities, students, and families. So this organization has a very broad reach, and their reach is through the young people. And I had the opportunity, I don't want to go deeply into it now, but I had the opportunity back in 2020 to actually work with this organization. And it was quite an experience for me to be able to participate in and serve them the way they needed to be served, and the role that I was playing as a facilitator and all of that. It was very exciting. And interestingly, it was Gail who introduced me to the Yes organization and their Earn and Learn program. And so that's how I ended up being a part of that. So Gail, if you remember, I know it was a while ago, but anything that you remember about the Yes organization?
Well, just how productive they were, and how their whole theoretical approach to the youth was so right on, and was very successful. And it was just, and they really covered a variety of different issues. But they worked with them and they saw them. They really were able to willing to see these kids and young people and listen to them, which I think was so crucial. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And they actually had a three-prong approach: empowering, enriching, and serving. So I'm gonna actually just read through some of the content that we found on their website that really kind of describes who they are, what they do, and why they do it. Empowering youth through mentorship, education, advocacy, and exposure; enriching students' educational, social, cultural, and workforce experiences; serving local and surrounding Pittsburgh communities, students, and families. I wanted to repeat that again because those words are so incredibly powerful in terms of being able to put together this environment where these young people are able to come and able to thrive. And I mentioned the part of the program that I was connected to, which is their Earn and Earn program. And Learn and Earn, I'm sure some of the listeners might already be familiar with that, but it's an opportunity for children to actually, or young people, teenagers, to work in a specific environment where they're actually earning some money, but they're also learning at the same time, right? And so it was very invigorating for me to sit down with, it was the young woman that I worked with was a woman by the name of Denise Jones. And her family is actually the founders of this organization. So I was in really, really good hands when I started meeting with her and putting everything together. She gave me the guidance that I needed to make sure that I was going to meet their expectations, but also be something, a positive force for the students. Right. So that was really important to me, to be that positive force for the students and everything. And just to dig a little bit more into what they're about, their mission statement is to provide socially and economically at-risk youth the opportunity to achieve success through participation in mentorship, the education, and enrichment programs. Their vision is to seek to empower communities. So do you see in their mission how they go from talking about the at-risk youth to how those at-risk youth are now playing a role in empowering their community? So it's beautiful to see that that connection is right there in the very thread that makes up this organization, and to seek to empower communities to become their own best resource.
Mhm.
Right? I
Right.
just love the sound of that. My community is its own best resource, meaning I'm taking care, the community is taking care of its own, if you will, including our young people, including our seniors, right? That we are the bread and butter, if you will, of our community, right? And then the ethos, every student matters, and there are no throwaway children. This means any and all youth facing hardships, limited access to vital resources, or a desire to be a part of an intentional community are welcomed into YES.
Yeah. That's beautiful. That's exactly what's needed. Right.
Don't overlook that resource. You
Such a-
know,
Absolutely.
like communities want to, in some cases, we want to be separate from kids. You've stopped your learning then. I mean, I can understand why some people want quieter communities, but I always want to live where there are people of all ages, or I would think I would just totally tune out. I wouldn't know how to use the newest device. Kids bring that to you just naturally.
Mhm.
And we
I
have
think one of the biggest, I'm going to use this word, the biggest robberies of young people.
Mm.
And again, when I compare back to my growing up to today, is the access that they have to recreational centers, the access that they have. So when I hear a lot of times people are complaining, those teenagers, they're just, they're just on the streets and they're just causing problems. We had a place to go.
Yeah.
Look at all of the resources that now are missing from our young people. When I think about the town that I grew up in, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 resources that we were able to go to after school. The community center, that's where I learned how to shoot pool. That's how I learned how to play table tennis. That's
With
why
their kids.
I had a little job braiding the boys' hair for $5. I mean, we had a place where we could go.
Mm.
And the more you think about or you think about from the standpoint of your paper boy.
Mhm.
My paper boy used to be a 12-year-old kid. Your paper boy now might be somebody driving their car and just tossing your newspaper out the window.
Yeah.
So all of those opportunities that we used to have for kids as part of their growth and development and beginning to understand what does it mean to be an adult, we've taken so much away from them. Manpower doesn't even exist the way that it did at one time.
Right. We've even taken away the ability for them to communicate verbally.
And basically, yeah.
Yeah, some kids are terrified to be on the phone or to go up to a stranger and ask a question. That is an effect of the cell phones, I think, and tablets and so on. But that fear is, well, we all lose. We all lose.
Yeah, exactly. But the real tragedy is what our young people are
Yes.
losing.
That's
That's
right.
the real tragedy, I
Mhm.
think.
They've never learned that as a base, right? To experience that. They don't have that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I've done a bit of an introduction into the Youth Empowerment Services organization. Now I'd like to flip the conversation just a little bit. And I'd like all three of us to talk a little bit more specifically about what role we have played as individuals to support youth engagement as a function of community engagement. So who wants to go first? I'm not going first. Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Gail.
Yeah, I can go first. So the nonprofit that I started and run, OMA, Center for Mind, Body, and Spirit, we've had two different youth programs that we've done. And the first one was called Art in the Garden, and it was for kids. It was in the inner city of Pittsburgh. And they were, at that point, there was probably about 70% people that were low income. And they lived in the neighborhood. And if you can picture a city block that had on the front street about 6 townhouses, or what was used to be called row houses. And behind them was like almost another complete city block that was purely made into a garden. It was a co-op that they developed. And so we used that garden that was filled with lots of different plants, vegetables, all kinds of different plants, as a day camp for kids that were in the neighborhood. And it was LGBTQ plus friendly. It was trauma-informed training that we trained teachers. It was really a very safe, open place for anybody to come. And the kids did. In fact, it was eventually over a 10-year period of time, we had so many kids that it closed down, shut down that size because we couldn't occupy the space any longer. But during that time, there's so many kids, mixed culture and mixed income, that were able to really learn things that they never would have learned. And they felt a part of this community, right? And they were able to dig in the dirt and plant things and grow things and learn how to make teas out of plants and all kind of variety of things. They had, we'd have people come in to taught them ceramics and taught them how blowing glass, and they had African dancers and music, and it was just an incredible experience. And Anita, you were part of that for a couple of years, and you came and provided your skills and your expertise for them. And the kids ranged from like 3 to I think about 14, 15. And the older the teenagers, obviously we've trained to have them help with the younger kids. And they got paid too, something. Amazing program that was very built into this community. And I really could see the kids thriving and interacting in ways that they never would have done before. And so it was very valuable. What's slowly happened in this area of Pittsburgh in the East End, unfortunately, is that that people came in and started buying some of the houses and they started flipping them. And so more of people of higher income began to buy them, and it pushed out a lot of the families that were lower income. We still gained over 50% of lower income, but it still changed the texture of the whole experience. So that was the one program. And the other program that we did was the Allegheny Intermediate Unit in the Pittsburgh Public Schools opened up a program. It's kind of like a healthy, holistic treatment center for all the kids that were thrown out of the high schools and the junior and senior high schools in the Pittsburgh Public Schools. And they brought them into this place in Turtle Creek, and it was pretty amazing. And it was very therapeutic. It was very holistic oriented, and we provided once a week or once a month, I can't remember now, but somebody that would come in and present, talk about social justice circles and talk about breathing and meditation, and I mean all kinds of different things. And Anita, you are also part of that program too.
Yeah.
But share a little bit about what your experience was with that.
It was amazing. But before I even talk about the AIU program, I wanted to drop something about the Art in the Garden. One of my fondest memories about being in Art in the Garden. Now, I'm a full-grown woman, but I was acting like a kid when I learned this particular thing is that plants emit sounds, and those sounds can be turned into music.
Music of the plant.
That blew me away.
Yeah.
That literally blew me away. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there that in that moment, I felt like I was a kid myself because I was learning and absorbing something that I had no idea was even a thing, right? So that was pretty amazing. But the thing that with AIU and working with that particular, and it was kind of like an alternative education kind of thing. To Gail's point, there were kids that were, for whatever reason, were not in some of the other schools. They were removed from some of the other local public schools and that sort of thing. And again, one of the things that stuck out for me was I did a assessment with them where it's kind of like that. What is your mindset? Do you have a growth mindset, or do you have a fixed mindset? Yeah, fixed mindset or growth mindset. And everybody went through the same assessment, like 10 questions or so, added up their score. And when they added up their score, it either fell in the growth bucket or the fixed bucket. And I just remember this one young lady, when she did her score, she fell in the fixed mindset bucket. She didn't like that because what she said was, I want to be the growth mindset. What do I have to do to be the growth mindset, to be and to have a growth mindset? So for me, it was an opportunity to kind of talk to her about that development process, because you can easily develop yourself from being a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And it's just a matter of knowing and understanding, how do I go about doing that? So that was a really powerful moment for me, because a huge light bulb went off for her. And not only did that light bulb go off, but she wanted to figure out, how do I maintain the light that's coming from that light bulb that I just experienced? So it was just an incredible experience. So I'm going to stop talking right now, and I'm going to let Mavis share her youth engagement story.
Well, when I saw what was coming up for the topic on this podcast, I didn't think I could contribute because I don't have children. And so I've not been involved in organizations that mothers and fathers tend to become a part of through their children. And my co-host gave me quite a talking to, because I had to think about it differently. Some of you may have heard me mention Seed a Better Life. It's the work I'm doing, or started doing, for genocide survivors over in Rwanda. And I started out with helping one young woman who had a medical issue. And then I started finding out that somebody else needed school fees and somebody else didn't have food. And I started raising money to just handle those things. And so fast forward, we've put like almost 200 kids through our program with either educational, food, medical, all kinds of support, even support for their mothers if they've been abandoned. And, I started out thinking I didn't want to start an organization, and I didn't want a business. I wanted to be kind of a big sister. I wanted to help like my family has helped me. And so I just pursued it in that way. And that's kind of the way it's still going. And I'm going to Rwanda next week, and I feel like I'm going to see my family. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to look at numbers. I'm going to hear testimonies about kids who, we had them in school for 3 years in one example. And that enabled this child to get a scholarship throughout the rest of high school and on to college in China. I just helped with those little bridges. And so I'm involved with youth like y'all are.
Exactly.
I just love them. And I see in them, I see myself. I see the desire to become something. And I see these major hurdles, and I'm thinking, I can't save the world, and that's what stops most people in their tracks. But you can start with one, maybe do 2, 3, or 5, something. Take a child under your wing, and it is so gratifying, so rewarding. It teaches you both. And I was thinking about this youth involvement, engagement, and community within my town, but like Anita said earlier, every student matters, and there's no throwaway children. Given the rough history of Rwanda, I've always had the hope and the belief that educated children would become different adults. They would develop critical thinking skills. They would act differently when there was a political strife or, the threat of war. And so I just, one child at a time, made that investment. And I will be back with some stories soon. Tell you how that's going.
Excellent. Excellent. So I'd like to mention, just like with Gail's program, I had the opportunity to kind of be involved. I also had the opportunity to be involved in the young people that Mavis supports. And one of the, when you think about, like, I'm living in America and these young people are in Rwanda, what are some of the ways that we can bridge the gap? So when I went to Rwanda, that was my second time being in Africa. And it was one of the most rewarding, transformational experiences that I've ever had in my life. And one of the things that I did, again, to kind of bridge between me as a person living in the United States and, these young people that were in Rwanda, and this is going back to like 2011, I believe it was, when I was there with you. But what I did to prepare is that I was teaching Sunday school at the time. So I got my Sunday school kids involved in this whole entire thing. And I was starting to tell them, like, I'm going to Africa. And they're like, you're going to Africa? So then I started telling them why I was going. And then next thing I know, one thing led to another. And we came up with this idea of my kids in Sunday school, ranging from like maybe the age of 5 to 12. They all wrote a card. They all got together, got out the pencils and the pens and the paints and everything, and they each created a card that was intended for the young people that I was going to meet when I got to Rwanda. And it was so beautiful. We were at the park. I gave out the cards and they were so touched. And so that was a way, this little artistic thing that I did with these kids connected these young people in Rwanda to these young people in a little town in Pennsylvania called Bristol, Pennsylvania. And it was amazing. I'm sorry, it was Trenton. I'm sorry, I'm getting my churches mixed up. It was Trenton, New Jersey is the church that we were in. And it was just a beautiful, beautiful thing. And we are completely out of time right now. I wish we could go on some more, but I need to kind of get to our close. And so I'd like to leave you with these closing, this particular quote. And it comes from Abby Wilson, who is the vice president of the Yes Board of Directors. Yes helps young people believe in themselves as agents of change and empowerment, and provides them with the tools, support, and experiences to do that, treating each young person who comes into contact with the organization as someone with beauty, grace, dignity, potential, and dreams. Imagine how life would look if we treated all of our young people like that. And of course, that quote brings us into our Cairo question. We ask this question every single episode. Will 5-year-old Cairo have to fight in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? And the question is it possible to imagine a future that is free from the shackles of divisiveness and shallow conversation? I believe that the answer is a resounding yes, and that we all have a role to play. The key is transformative engagement. So what will you do if you're listening? What will you do to contribute? So you can start by joining our conversation on our private Facebook page under the podcast name Inflection Point Podcast. So you can go over there, join our Inflection Point Podcast private Facebook page, and add your voice to what's happening. And if you decide to do that, please share with us what are some of the work that you are doing in your community. So thank you for listening. This is Anita Russell, Mavis Bauman, and Gail Hunter signing off from Inflection Point Podcast. We are here every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time on Transformation Talk Radio. Thank you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Inflection Point Podcast, where our mantra is cultivating change from the inside out. The journey towards anti-racism and social change doesn't stop here. Truth, reconciliation, and healing come from ongoing, open, honest, and deliberate conversations. Continue to dive in and deconstruct your thoughts, ideas, and beliefs as we band together to manifest social change. Tune in to Inflection Point Podcast every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more conversations about how we can cultivate change from the inside out.